Hello, my name is Sam Feltham, the Director of the Public Health Collaboration, and welcome to our 2021 virtual conference. It's been a difficult year to say the least, but I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to all of our ambassadors, members, patrons, and Scientific Advisory Board members for all of your support through these difficult times. Without you, we would never be able to continue to better inform the public about the power of lifestyle to help create a better world. Now, before I let the next presenter speak, this conference is 100% free for all forever. However, if you find the content here today valuable, then please consider a £2 donation or whatever you can afford via www.phcuk.org/donate, or if you're in the UK, you can simply text PHC to 70660 to donate £2 directly from your phone, and of course texts are charged at your standard network rate. We hope you enjoy the conference from wherever you are in the world, and be sure to get involved in the civil conversation here on YouTube or by using the hashtag PHCVCon2021 on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for your support and be well.
Fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to present evidence in support of the hypothesis that the seed oils, the vegetable oils, are the primary drivers of virtually all of our diseases of civilization, our westernized diseases, including heart disease, hypertension, stroke, cancers, type 2 diabetes, metabolic disease, Alzheimer's, overweight, obesity, macular degeneration, the list goes on and on. I will submit to you that while processed foods are the major drivers of all of this disease, those processed foods are just primarily four components: refined flours, sugars, seed oils, and trans fats. And of those, it is the seed oils, the vegetable oils, that are the primary drivers. And today I'll present evidence in support of this hypothesis. All right, let me go ahead and get to my screen share here. So this is Omega-6 apocalypse, and I will present evidence, as I said, that vegetable oils are the unifying mechanism for all of these diseases. And let's get into some of this evidence right away. So here we go. First, I'm going to present to you that the fact that most of the major nutrition organizations tell us to consume these seed oils, that they're healthy. These are healthy omega-6 fats. This is Harvard, Tufts University, Mayo Clinic, American Heart Association. Here's Penn Medicine, Cleveland Clinic, and even the World Health Organization, all telling us to remove animal fats, the saturated animal fats, and the animal fats in general mostly, and substitute these oils, because these will do one thing, and really one thing only, and that is lower our cholesterol, which they submit will decrease our risk of heart disease. I could not disagree any more. All right. But I will tell you and submit to you that there are two primary drivers of obesity and chronic disease, and this is nutrient deficiency and toxicity. And that there's really a single source for this, and it's processed foods. But if you flip this on its head, processed foods are the primary drivers of nutrient deficiency and toxicity. And let's try to review why. Now, I'm going to go through a couple hundred years of medical history here very quickly, so that you can begin to see, if you're not aware of this, how rare most of this, most all obesity and chronic disease was. Now, often what we see is this: the whole world is becoming overweight and obese, and the United States leads the way, which we have for decades. And then it is often pinned on this, the US dietary guidelines in 1980 that told us to go low fat. and consume more carbs, and that total energy began to increase. And it did, almost 250 calories a day, or approximately, over the next decade. And then we see this: carbs are up, fat is down, therefore carbs are the problem. I could not disagree more. What I'm going to try to show you is that what's happening really is that the fat composition of our diet is changing. We are substituting seed oils for animal fats, and this is the primary problem. All right, now let's go back here. This is causes of death over the last 110 years, or this period between 1900 and 2010. And you'll see on the left that the top three causes of death from the bottom up: pneumonia, tuberculosis, GI infections, all infectious disease in year 1900. Heart disease, listed fourth there, is known to be almost exclusively cardiac valvular disease, not coronary artery disease. All right, and we'll come back to this. And if you look on the right, 2010, heart disease, cancers, COPD, strokes, Alzheimer's, diabetes, kidney disease. 7 of the top 10 causes of death today are now chronic diseases, most of which were quite unknown 110 years ago. So let's look at heart disease. So back on your far left there, in 1811, Boston, there was no heart disease deaths listed in their mortality reports. In fact, there was 25 sudden deaths. That was 2.6%. So even if you think all of that was heart disease, that's only 2.6%. It was probably mostly cardiac valvular disease causing that. In fact, in the entire 19th century, 1800 to 1900, there's only 8 papers that I'm aware of on coronary artery disease type death. 8. In fact, 1897, Sir William Osler, famed physician, one of the founding partners of Johns Hopkins Hospital, published a paper reviewing his previous 21 years of hospital experience. He had witnessed about 6 cases of angina, never seen a heart attack. In fact, even 13 years later, in 1910, he presented to his colleagues in London, England, to colleague physicians, and he noted an additional 208 cases of angina, chest pain, that could represent heart disease. Still, he had not witnessed a heart attack. In fact, almost nobody in the world had. 1912, John Herrick published the first known case of myocardial infarction, MI, heart attack in the United States, documented with autopsy evidence. 1930s, coronary heart disease became the leading cause of death. It was virtually unknown in 1908 or 1910. Why? Why is it not? Then did it become the leading cause of death? And today, almost 1 in 3 deaths due to coronary heart disease. So the increase looks something like this, like that red line there. All right, let's look at cancer. So Boston, 1811, 1 in 188 people known to have died of cancer. Now, they knew all about cancer in that era. 1900, it's 5.8% of deaths. That's 1 in 17. 2010, it's almost again 1 in 3. So the increase looks something like this. That's a 62-fold increase in cancer deaths in 200 years. Why? Type 2 diabetes. We know diabetes of any type was rare in the 19th century. It rose considerably by 1935 to 0.37%, continues to rise all the way to 9.4%, a 25-fold increase in this 80-year period alone. It is now 10.5%. Recent statistics, which I don't have on here, but nevertheless, already between 1935 and 2015, a 25-fold increase. All right, how about obesity? We know obesity was 1.2% in the 19th century in the US. From Scott Allen Carson's research, so by 1960, we're at 13% obesity, which is an 11-fold increase. 23% obesity by 1988, 34.3% by 2005. 2015, we're at 39.8%, and we are on target to be 50% obesity by 2030, all published. But even in this period, this is a 33-fold increase in obesity in 115 years. Why? All right, how about metabolic syndrome? First described 1921, 1922 by Kylan and Marinon. Vague, contributed more evidence in 1940s and 50s. Rare disorder by all accounts. Hainfield and Leonard called this metabolic syndrome, which is again a combination of hypertension, abnormal lipids, insulin resistance, high blood sugar, and visceral obesity. We even called it Syndrome X in 1988. But here's what we see. 1988 to 94, 24% of adults with the disease, rising all the way up to 88% of adult Americans cannot meet 5 criteria of metabolic health by 2009 to 16 without medications. So 12% of the US now metabolically healthy. How about macular degeneration, the leading cause of irreversible vision loss and blindness in people over the age of 65? Less than 50 cases in the world's literature. In the 80-year period between 1851 and 1930, today, 196 million cases worldwide. So again, drastic increase from 1 in thousands to nearly again 1 in 3. How about osteoarthritis? We know this, it's doubled since the mid 20th century. I'm going to go quickly here. Looks something like this. Late 1900s to early 2000s versus early industrial period. So again, now let's talk about the 200 years of dietary history that correlates to all of this. And I will submit to you, this is a global human experiment without informed consent. It is just these 4 foods really that made up processed food that have changed the world's diets forever. And this is the experiment. So sugar, cottonseed oil, refined wheat flour, and trans fats. Now, 3 of these, as you see from this timeline, cottonseed oil, the first vegetable oil, essentially for most of the world, for probably 99.7 or 8% of the world, introduced in the US in 1866. Roller mill technology gave us refined wheat flour, nutrient deficient food in 1880, and Procter & Gamble gave us trans fats in 1911. That is processed food, and all in place by 1911, right? And then it just increases drastically. Weston Price connects all of these foods to physical degenerative disease back in 1939 and 1945. And by 2009, 63% of the American diet is processed food, according to our own USDA, and it's those 4 foods. Here they are. So vegetable oils, trans fats, sugars, and refined wheat. Again, just those 4 foods. That's basically processed food. And this is what it looks like today. So that leaves about 1/4 of the diet as whole foods: meat, fowl, fish, fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, and dairy, right? But basically that. All right, so if we go back to the early 20th century, this man, Elmer V. McCollum, nutrition researcher, he and colleagues did thousands of studies on animals to try to evaluate what it was about diets and vitamins and minerals that kept animals healthy. And this is one example that I think is incredibly important. So these 2 sets of mice, these are representative examples, were on identical diets, except for the fat source. And the rats on the left were getting 5% cottonseed oil, and the rats on the right, 1.5% butterfat. Now, they began these diets after weaning, which is about 26 days. And so the rats on the cottonseed oil, as their only fat, grew to about 60% of normal size, survived 555 days on average. They're weak, sickly, fragile rats. The rats on the right getting only 1.5% of their diet as butterfat. That's their only fat. They're healthy, they grow to normal size and live 1,020 days on average. So they are twice the size, approximately, infinitely more healthy, and live about twice as long on butterfat. Why is this? Well, this is what McCollum said in his book in 1918. The diet must contain 2 as yet unidentified substances or groups of substances. One of these is associated with certain fats and is especially abundant in butterfat, egg yolk fats, and the fats of the glandular organs, such as the liver and kidney, but is not found in any fats or oils of vegetable origin. These are the fat-soluble vitamins. That's what's in these foods: butter, egg yolk fats, glandular organs, and cod liver oil, as you'll see. But these are not in vegetable oils, right? McCollum goes on and says both the growth-promoting fat which again, the animal fats, butter, milk, cod liver oil, organ meats. These are the fats, but again, he says both the growth promoting fat and the trace of unidentified substance in the alcoholic extract of wheat germ are necessary for the promotion of growth or the preservation of health. Now, the unidentified substance in the alcoholic extract of wheat germ was the B vitamins and C. And these are both necessary for the promotion of growth or the preservation of health. We don't need these just to grow. We need these in adulthood. And we have supplanted these foods, butter, eggs, milk, cod liver oil, organ meats with, guess what? Seed oils, vegetable oils. This is why we're not growing properly. We're getting sick. We have all this disease. And it's these vegetable oils. And these are also known as polyunsaturated vegetable oils, PUFA edible oils, plant oils, omega-6 oils, and linoleic acid sometimes. LA is, which is the primary omega-6 fat in these, all right? And here's the worst oils I will submit to you: soybean, corn, canola, cottonseed, grapeseed, sunflower, safflower, and rice bran. Why are these dangerous? Because they're highly polyunsaturated, high in omega-6. All right, this is total vegetable oil consumption in the United States. This is our published data. You can see we're at 2 grams a day back in the 1860s, all the way to 80 grams a day by 2005, or 2010, I'm sorry. And that is about 32% of caloric intake. Realize 1900, 99% of added fats came from animal fat, lard, butter, and beef tallow. But by 2005, 86% of added fats documented to have come from vegetable oils. And this is where the dietary guidelines were implemented. Now, remember, our fat went down. Fat consumption's going down. But vegetable oil consumption's still going way up, right? So we're supplanting more and more of our animal fats with vegetable oils. All right, didn't just happen in the US. In this period between 1963 and 2003, developed countries, vegetable oil doubled. Developing countries, they tripled. Japan up 4.5-fold as an example. China up almost 8-fold. And remember, 2003 was 18 years ago. They're still increasing, and the world is becoming fatter and sicker. Here's why. Here's all this blue is the omega-6 in these oils. And from the 5th one down, cottonseed oil, all those down, that's all the highly polyunsaturated oils that are in our food supply. And if you go back to 1865, this is where we would have gotten most of our omega-6 linoleic acid, or LA, which is butter, lard, and beef tallow at 3, 2, and 2%. So again, this is all the oils we have today. All that blue gives us all this omega-6. And here's where we would have been in 1865. And so what did this do to our linoleic acid omega-6 consumption? Well, it was about 2 grams a day in 1865, approximately, or about 1% of calories. It rose to about 2% of calories, or about 5 grams a day in 1909, up to 18 grams a day by 1999, and 29 grams a day by 2008, up to 11.8%, about 12% of our calories. So the increase looks something like this: 12-fold increase in omega-6 in this approximately 145-year period. This experiment did not begin in 1980 when we were told to go low fat. It began in 1866 with the introduction of seed oils. And this is what we see. This is heart disease deaths in red versus vegetable oil in the black. Look at the extraordinary correlation. And you can see saturated fat, the line is practically flat, almost no change, right? Now, let's look at some populations around the world that do not have coronary heart disease. And we see some extraordinary examples, and they're extraordinarily different diets, but still without heart disease. So this is the Maasai tribe of Kenya and Tanzania in Eastern Africa. And this is what their diet was confirmed to be in 1972 by George Mann and colleagues. Their diet is milk, meat, and blood, almost exclusively from their pastoralists. And they consume this from the cattle that they herd. 66% animal fat diet, 3,000 calories a day. It's about 33 to 45% saturated animal fat, skip down 1.7% omega-6. Yet they had no heart disease, 350 EKGs, 50 autopsies, one possible silent MI in the entire group. Yet our American Heart Association tells us to consume no more than 5 to 6% of our calories as saturated fat, right? So how does this entire tribe get away with this on a 66% animal fat diet, right? But Americans, we look like this, a lot of us, on a diet of 24 to 32% vegetable oils, right? Okay, let's skip down to the South Pacific, the inhabitants of Tokelau. So the Tokelauans were studied in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and this is their diet: coconut, fish, starchy tubers, and fruit. 54 to 62% of their calories coming from coconut. Coconut oil is massively saturated fat, so their diet was 53% fat, 48% of it saturated. This is the highest saturated fat diet in the world, as far as I know. Whereas, again, this is coming from coconut, but whereas the Maasai had the highest saturated animal fat diet in the world. But this diet is about 2% PUFA. That's total omega-6 and omega-3. That means they're probably around 1%, 1 to 1.5% omega-6, right? But 1982, none of the men aged 40 to 69 had evidence of heart disease, no obesity, no diabetes, fantastically healthy. Now, I want to show you that this is a graph from Stefan Guillenet, collating 37 studies of the omega-6 linoleic acid in our adipose, our body fat. And you can see it is accumulating to massive degrees. We were at 9.1% in 1959 on average, and up to 21.5% in 2008. So you see it correlates with our increasing seed oil consumption, right? This is where the Tokelauans were, 3.8%. So they were off the chart low on their omega-6, right? Let's look at one more population, the inhabitants of Tukasinta, Papua New Guinea. So this population is very unique, very, very different diet. Sweet potatoes account for more than 90% of their calories. They were studied by Sinnott and White back in published this evidence in 1973. They would occasionally feast on pork and chicken. And here's their diet: 94.6% carb, 3% protein, 2.4% fat. That's 0.6% omega-6 linoleic acid approximately. Yet, population was lean, physically fit, and in good nutritional state, absence of obesity and hypertension, no diabetes or gout, ischemic heart disease, rare if not absent, no macular degeneration. How do they get away with this? It's another ancestral diet. So these populations do not have refined sugar, refined wheat, processed foods, or vegetable oils, right? That's what they don't have. And if you look at all these traditional populations, so really the elephant in the room is omega-6 linoleic acid, which is only 0.6 to 1.7% in traditional living populations if you look at all of them. And where are we as Americans? 7 to 12% is what the typical westernized diet is, all in most of the world now, in developed nations, right? Because we're consuming omega-6. Again, back to this curve, right? And so again, here's the linoleic acid in our body fat versus the curve of obesity, right? And again, one more with the appropriate linoleic acid on this curve relating to vegetable oil. You can see this, the omega-6 accumulates in our fat. And right here's obesity prevalence, again, published by Stefan Guillenet. Look at obesity versus carbs. Carbs are down. Why would obesity still be increasing? This is sugar. Obesity is still increasing despite sugar going down, right? What's the problem? Here's seed oil. This is from my colleague, Kate Shanahan. Look at seed oils on this curve way back from 1909. And look at the carbs down there, approximately flat if you look at it over a century. And look at diabetes and prediabetes prevalence, up, up, and up, right? So I want to show you the case of Japan. because this is another incredible example of this. So notice that obesity, although very low in Japan, has climbed dramatically. Now, this was when obesity was characterized as BMI greater than 30, and they more recently changed the characterization to BMI greater than 25 for the Asian populations because they tend to be so much leaner. So, but look at the increase in obesity since 1976. And I'm going to go quickly here now. This is Ansel Keys' published study, which we of course we vilify all the time. But what was the reality is that Japan had the lowest degenerative heart disease of almost all the developed nations. And this is Yerushalmi and Hilbo's 1957 22 country study where they published all the evidence. Again, Japan is way down at the bottom for heart disease. And from this paper, Trends in Nutritional Intake, what they show here, the first thing, total daily energy intake decreased from 1958 to 2000 to 1999, decreased from 2837 to 2202 calories. All right, so take a look at this. This is look at the energy intake going down from 1958 to 2000, to 1999, and the fat consumption going up, carbohydrates going down, 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 right? And look at the rice consumption from 593 grams in 1958 down to 236 in 1999. And so, but I want to call your attention to this drastic decrease in carbohydrates. But let's see what happens to them. Now, this is some coronary risk factors. Diastolic blood pressure, increasingly up. Blood pressure medicines, 3% in 1958, 20% in 1999. Body mass index from 21.7 to 23.7. And smoking is down, all right? And from this paper, in Japan, diabetes prevalence markedly up, 61%. I'll go quickly here. And even in adolescents, type 2 diabetes among Japanese primary school children increased tenfold between 1976 and 1995. All right, I'm going to go quickly. Metabolic syndrome in Okinawa, prevalence of metabolic syndrome, 30.2% in men, 10.3% in women in Okinawa, 2003 and 4. Right? Half the men over age 40 obese in Okinawa. How about breast cancer and cancers in general? Well, this is the curve, and it shows cancers of the breast, colon, lung, and rectum all markedly increased. All right. Obesity. Look at the pre-obese, 24.5% in males, 17.8% in females, and obese, much higher, right? Marked increase in obesity in men. Again, I have to go quickly. Overweight and obese men, drastically increased since 1980. Calorie intake, though, down. And here is harmful vegetable oils and sugars. Mostly the problem here, vegetable oils increased from 9 grams to 39 grams a day. Macular degeneration up 57-fold in this period of time. So this is the main thing I want to show you. Carb consumption down, fat consumption up, high PUFA oils, just between 1958 and 1961 and 2004, I'm sorry, 9 grams to 39 grams a day. And in order to stay on time, I have to go quickly here. But oils, only 3 grams a day in 1949, 1950 in Japan. And this compares, Americans were at 3 grams a day in 1900, right? So drastically increased prevalence of metabolic syndrome. Again, and this is from Okiyama's and colleagues' published paper. You can see this also documents the drastic decrease in total energy, carbohydrates way down, lipids way up. And what are those lipids? Seed oils. And look at the diabetes. Here is, again, from another paper. Look at the overweight and obese in men since 1980. And I laid this in here, the calorie intake, for the same years, and it is down. So in men from years 1997 to 2012, while caloric consumption decreases for every age group except men age 70 plus, obesity went up. All right, take a look. Seed oils went from 3 grams a day in 1950 to 39 grams a day by 2004. Omega-6 from about 1.5% and 1% in 1949 and 1960 up to 6.2% by 2004. All right, and this is here's what we see. So between 1960 and 2004, calories down 31%, carbs down 28%, fat up 440%, seed oils up 333%, saturated fat still only 7%, and omega-6 up 520%. So with this increasingly lower carbs and higher fat, Japan has marked increases in obesity, cancers, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, macular degeneration, and a reduction in longevity. So how do we conclude low carbs diets are the problem, right? So macronutrient ratios play little issue. It is the seed oils that are a great problem. And I want to say these fats are not the same. I will submit to you that the vegetable oils are toxic waste. Animal fats from traditionally raised animals, fantastically healthy. I will submit 80% of our problem is driven by seed oils and trans fats. Most of the remainder due to sugars and refined flours. Just get the seed oils out of your diet and processed foods, and that will solve this. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I hope this has been beneficial. And again, my name is Chris Knobbe, and I can be reached at cureamd.org, Cure AMD Foundation. Thank you very much.